Good evening. ARHayes, I'm with the Convict's Thoughts. Let's just dive right in. I've actually got two topics that have been on my mind, literally pinging for the last couple of nights, and I know a few of you would ask me questions about it, and I kind of, paused for a minute so that I could gather my thoughts and think about it, and the thoughts have just been pinging. So let's talk about it. First topic. How many of you do you remember the party days when we were younger? I mean, I'm in my mid-40s, and I still remember them pretty well. And being at houses where it would be a underage drinking party going on, and knock, knock, knock at the door, and who is it other than the badged law enforcement? First thing they want to do is know, whose house is this? Why are you here? And then once they figure all that out, they start diving in to find the underage drinkers that are at the party. That's citations, or it's time to leave the party. We're going to break this whole situation up. So in the back of my head, I've just kind of been pondering. We see a lot of the body cam footage in regards to the Moscow, Idaho, and the Idaho 4 actual crime scene home, where parties are transpiring and complaints are being made for noise complaints. And I remember when I was young, that's literally what got our parties busted, was noise complaints. When we had the music playing, too many people in the backyard, having a little too much fun. Yeah, I'll admit, we had a few at my house. So I get the fact that police get called and they come, they break up the party. But if we really watch these videos, and one of them I want to hone in on, and Hunter Johnson just seems to either be a great friend to everybody within the home, or he's just at the home a lot. When the police came for a noise complaint and a young lady answered the door and they asked for who from the home was there and they needed to talk to him, and she said, well, let me go get somebody. And the two young men came to the door, one of them being Hunter. And they specifically told the officers nobody that resided in the home was there. So let's pause right here, because I know many people that watch my channel are older and probably have raised children or have children they're raising now. Many of you guys have probably raised some great kids that made it through college, and you're proud of them. But I just want to ask you, if your child was 18, 19, 20 years old, and the officers came to the door and found out nobody in the home that actually lived there was there, don't you think in the back of your mind your kid would most likely be in a little bit of trouble? Because what many don't realize is that's actually a crime. You're in a home without the inhabitants of the home being there, so the officers literally could detain you for breaking and entering. They can get you for trespassing. There's many charges they could actually put on you. Commission of a crime within a home where the actual inhabitants of the home are not there can be deemed as burglary, felony burglary. So many would stop me right there and say, but what commission of the crime was happening? Why would you even say that? AR, why would you even go there? There were crimes being committed. Underage drinking is a crime. The officers should not have allowed people to be in the home when there is not a resident of the home there. I know that a phone call was made, and one of the living in the home so-called house inhabitants was on the phone. We know it is Maddie, speaking with the officers. But how do they know that's Maddie? Have they ever talked to her on the phone? Do they recognize her voice? Do they know her by the phone number that's displayed on the cell phone that's handed to them? I mean, come on, ladies and gentlemen. Games get played in college all the time. They get played in high school. They get played in college. They get played after college. It's just all how quick the mind is to be able to get away from law enforcement and the possible trouble you might be in. Do you realize on the night of the crimes, they were doing a plainclothes, LE enforced stoppage of underage drinkers in the actual Banfield, right in front of the home? They were harassing these kids, running their IDs, even asking a gentleman that says he's over the age of 21, walking by with a little bit of alcohol in his hand, if he had his ID. When he said no, they wanted him to give the information so they could run him. That's good work. That should happen in college towns. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to protect the college kids that are out at 3 o'clock in the morning, make sure they're okay, make sure that they're able to be healthy enough to walk home. There's nothing wrong with doing an underage check whatsoever. But I find a problem that they're willing to do that at 3 o'clock in the morning in just a field. Yet when they actually approach a home and are told not one person that lives in the home is there. Things should have got rolling right there. Those kids should have been removed immediately. And I'm going to make a point about this here in a minute that's even bigger than that spectrum, but I'm just giving you kind of the basics. We see people coming to the door, including one of the actual victims that lost her life, Xana, talking and displaying the fact that she is not sober, talking with the officers. They didn't once run her ID when that home is known to be under actual sanctions with the university for many of issues from what is being stated, including noise complaints and parties and things happening, and not one time did they ask her for her ID. I've been ID'd at my home so many times when I was the actual person throwing the party that I had to show my ID so they could make record of who they talked to at the property. I couldn't just give my name. They didn't believe that. They wanted my ID. And when you're in college, you're over the age of 18, it's required to have an ID on you. When an officer asks for it, you have to be able to present it. And many people will debate back and forth on that. I get it. And I'm not here to get in a debate on that. I just know what I've experienced, and I know what many others have experienced. You better have an ID on you, especially if you have been drinking or are drinking. And it's pretty important to be able to fashion that ID. Again, on body cam footage, when they talked with Hunter and they talked with the other gentleman that came to the door after the young lady that said nobody lived at the door, when did they ask them for ID? They didn't. They didn't ask any of them. Yet when we see Kaylee have to come out the back slider door, again with Hunter, Hunter does not get ID'd. However, they do ID Kaylee for a noise complaint and take a picture of her ID. Let's kind of piece some of this together because there's a few body cam footages. So let's kind of piece it together. Let's think about this. Early on, noise complaint, parties at home, one with Emma Bailey coming out, alcohol all in front of the house. Not one of them got ID'd. Okay. Next noise complaint. Xana comes to the door and is talked to in regards to a noise complaint. Looks a little inebriated. Not asked for an ID. 2 for 2. Young lady answers the door. Hunter Johnson comes down, talks with law enforcement, gets Maddie on the phone to talk with law enforcement. They talk about they are highly intelligent at what they do. They've been doing this for years upon years within the department, so they don't put up with anything. And they talk with Maddie on the phone, don't ID anybody. In a party where it's stated none of the residents are at the actual home. Not one ID pulled. Yet Kaylee comes to the back door for a noise complaint, no alcohol, looking quite nice, dressed professionally and looking quite nice, talking with the officers, and has her ID asked for and photographed. Young males walking through the field the night of the actual crime, inebriated, maybe partying, all ID'd, all ran. Where do you come up with the idea of who should be and who shouldn't be ran when their IDs should be pulled, why they shouldn't be pulled? If you're going to do it for one, why aren't you doing it for others? And if you know you're showing up at a home that's already on disciplinary action with the university, why aren't you diving in a little bit deeper and making sure that everything appropriate is happening within the home? I know if I was a father, I'd be a strict father. I know that for a fact. I'd be a cool dad. And, you know, underage drinking to me is not the worst of the worst. I probably wouldn't have an issue with my son or daughter having beer or wine or alcohol beverages at a younger age than 21. If they did it intelligently, in moderation, and were respectful enough of me as a father to at least be honest with me, call me, and that way I would know they were okay. I would understand. But law enforcement would be a little bit of a different expectation for me as a father. If you arrived at a home or in a field and my child was underage in drinking and said to be at a home where the owners of the home were not there, I would expect a little more diving into that situation to happen. I would expect that that party would be dispersed before something in an unattended home transpired. I want safety for all, whether it be something that some don't agree a minor should do. I personally not having an issue with a minor doing it as long as they're doing it appropriately. I still want caution to be taken. I want everybody to go home safely at the end of the night. I want every parent to have their child still with them to be loved. Could the non-paying attention and the non-protection of that home, when we're talking about 1122 King Road, or what some are now calling 1122 Queen Road, if we had a little bit more of a protective role on that home, meaning we don't allow unattended people in the home without someone that lives there being in attendance, could we have maybe protected those that lived within that home? And the reason why I asked that question, how do you know the perpetrator of the crime was not somebody who was used to being in that home when others who lived in the home were not there? So it didn't seem out of place that someone could possibly be laying in wait in that home with nobody who actually lived there knowing. Just because everybody around it knew it was okay. How do we know 4 people were not in that home on that very night, laying in wait, having a drink or two, while officers are busting other people out in the field, knowing they've got free reign on the place until the said victims walk in the door. How many people in that home that actually resided there were of age and able to be drinking? Out of the 6, how many people were of age to be allowed to be drinking? And out of those, who could hold a 150-person party with everybody old enough to be drinking? You can't blame law enforcement on everything that happens in life. But how many trips do you have to make to a single home to get to know the occupants and know who's of legal age and not? My house was well known when I was younger. And when the officers showed up, they knew exactly who they were looking for. I put myself on that map. I did it. I put myself on that map. If your home is under scrutiny and under disciplinary through the university, I bet law enforcement has that home on their map. They know you. They know you. They may claim they don't, but they do. It's just odd to me that I'm watching on body cam footage the night of the actual, well, the morning of the crime, late morning, 3 a.m., where they claim to see Kohberger's car driving. But I'm watching officers in plain clothes in an undercover car IDing people appropriately for underage drinking. Yet every other body cam footage that I see doesn't do it once, other than Kaylee, where they take a picture of her ID. But blatantly stated, nobody who resides in the home is here during this party. Not one person that speaks for this home is here. But let me get them on the phone for you. I don't know how you guys feel. That just seems off to me. It's very, very off. And that's what kind of slides me into my second topic that I'm just going to spend a brief moment on, because it's a whole nother whopping topic in its own self. One I could dive into probably for hours and speak about. But where is law enforcement when it comes to actually holding some of the people surrounding this whole ordeal accountable? Let's talk about Emma and Demetrius crossing state lines, known to be the ones delivering said goods, where a young man, another University of Idaho student, loses his life. They're arrested. They're charged. All of a sudden, the courts dismiss the charges. The arresting agency comes out and makes a statement. They didn't have jurisdiction to hold the two on the charges they were charging them with. So I'm a little confused. I'm a little confused by that. And the only reason why I'm confused by this is because, well, I'm an ex-con. I've committed crimes across state lines. It sucks that I even am able to talk about it, but guess what? I can give you a little insight. So, in a case, let's say I'm making a delivery and I leave my city of residence. So we'll just use an example. I leave Washington State University Pullman campus. and I drive across the Idaho border into Moscow, Idaho. I brought the said substance from Washington State, where I got it, and I drove it into Idaho and distributed it where a life was lost because of that distribution. And I drove myself back to Washington State to go to sleep for the night and call it said and done. Now, in that scenario, a crime was committed in both places. Let me let that sink in for a minute. A crime was committed in both places. Crime one at Washington State University before I left would be the gaining of the narcotics, whether I purchased it, bartered for it, or even was given it. I had it in my possession. It is possession of a narcotic. Now, how I got it could be more crimes. Who I got it from could also be charged. They committed a crime by giving it to me. But we don't tell on people, so we take the fall ourselves. So now I could have charges where I got the narcotics. Now I get in my car and I begin to drive with the said narcotics. That's another crime. That's commission of another felony. Now I have the intent to distribute said narcotics. The only reason why it's intent to distribute is because at the end of the day I distributed it. If I did not distribute it, then it would only be a crime of possession upon myself. It would be my own. And most times they probably wouldn't even charge that, depending on what it was. Now when I get to my next destination to deliver, I've already committed a crime. Even before anything happens, outside of the Washington crime, I've already created a new issue for myself by crossing the state border, and each county I drive through could prosecute me. It's possession of illegal narcotics driving across state lines, for one. That could even be held as a federal crime, which would supersede even the state crimes. But two, each county I drove through could charge me with possession of a narcotic. And if they found out I later distributed, it could be the intent to distribute a narcotic. Then, of course, the end result would be where I distribute it to someone and they lost their life. Now I have a distribution charge, and most likely, bare minimum, I have a manslaughter charge. It could be much higher, depending on the drug that I distributed and what they want to charge me with. Could be as low as just a manslaughter. I didn't mean to do it, but I delivered it and he lost his life. Or it could be as much as the murder charge. If they wanted to go that high, they could. But what's everybody else is also missing the point, because I've been here and I've done this, there's other charges that can be tied to this as well. There's two people involved. I'm not sure if you know what that means. That could be brought as a criminal syndicate charge. More than one person involved in the crime. It's a connected crime. That's hefty. And that goes all the way up to federal level. It starts at the state level and can go all the way up to the federal level. Criminal syndicate at the state level can be punished by up to a life sentence. It's organized crime. Now, these two individuals, Emma and Demetrius, who both at the time of this have priors. And let me tell you why that matters. When you have a prior, that enhances your charges and at the end result ups your actual conviction. Meaning, when you get a slap on your wrist for the first time doing something stupid, you can get probation, you get, released from jail without having to post a bail. You get a lot of luxuries on skating the little fine line and getting a little love. When you have priors, you don't get a very low bail, and your sentence is typically enhanced. You don't get the luxury of, well, we're just going to slap your hand and let you out. And when you look at Demetrius, I think he's actually one I can look at and say he may have more charges on him than I ever had in my life. And he has violent charges. He's not one that they just slap the hand and let go. So someone please educate me on how I just described the levels of crime all the way across the board from the minute they were in their home county receiving said product to the point they delivered and a young man lost his life. How are none of those charges able to be brought because someone says they don't have the jurisdiction to do so? Every place they were has the jurisdiction to charge them with something. And they could all come together and file a federal charge. But not one of them has. Not one. Not one charge against either one of them. One of them doesn't even live in the state anymore. Who knows where the other one is? They went underground. But my question just really gravitates back to the point, we're back at the same LE department in Moscow, Idaho, that mishandled all the parties and the underage drinking and everything going on in that nature. Did they possibly mishandle a case with Emma? Because from what I've found and gathered as well, sure seems like the DUI is gone as well. What type of deal did she make? Because let me put that card in my back pocket for later use. I need to know how she got that deal. And Demetrius, I really need to know how you got that deal, because I, like you, have priors, and I would like to know how to get out of future charges if I could. That'd be great. No, I'm just kidding. I'm on a straight line now. I got a good wife, and here I am. I sit with you guys. We talk about these things. I don't have to do them anymore. But food for thought, guys. Let the wheels spin a little bit in the mind. And I'm not saying this is the cause of what caused the Idaho 4 tragedy. You can't lay it all down on this. But could a little more protection of the home helped the outcome of what possibly happened? And I will be tying this into a future video. Why was Kaylee so scared to come back to that home? Why was she hesitant to be the +1 when she clearly seemed to love everybody in the home that we see on the video? We know she loved Maddie. That was her best friend forever, her sister. She had to be urged to come back. Did she not feel safe in that home? Was there something about that home just didn't feel safe? Why did Xana's dad have to change her bedroom lock just prior to the tragedy? Did she not feel safe in the home? What about the young lady up the street that her underwear was found in the center console of her car while other of her belongings were moved all over the place, and the officers didn't even really remotely seem to care? Must have been a good prank in their eyes. Or maybe she might have been smart enough to not let them photograph her ID. food for thought. It just pings around in my mind a lot. Now, hoping maybe you guys can leave me some great comments, some of your thoughts, some of your opinions. Enlighten me a little bit. Let me know how you feel. ARHayes, Convict's Thoughts. Appreciate you joining me again. Have a great night.